Is the honeymoon period over for AEW? WWE ramps up for its next big pay-per-view. New Japan Wrestling's New Japan Cup is in full swing, and WandaVision comes to an end. This is the Rantin Review Podcast. How you doing? Welcome back to the podcast. Hopefully you guys have been healthy and safe out there. It's almost springtime and daylight savings, so things are getting a little bit brighter in the world, and you got vaccines going around, maybe. So, oh man, I'm hoping at some point this year we can all get back, because there's some, I like to do some meet and greets sometimes. There's so many of you out here now. I think I probably want to do some. I remember when I went back to I used to go to the old New Japan shows that they had in the States, and I went to one at Walter Pyramid, and I went to one in the San Francisco one, and just like a lot of people, it was so shocking to me, like how many people, every step I would take, somebody who knew who I was, and they were like, "Hey, Wrestle Rant," and I was like, "Oh, what? Ooh, what? Oh, yeah." Even at the AEW, because I was at the first AEW Dynamite, because it was in DC down the street, and Full Gear, and people were coming up to me and saying stuff. It was kind of interesting. So I think in the future, once this pandemic thing is over with, if there are any shows, I might want to do a meet and greet at some point in time. And speaking of that, it's probably going to be for the Patreons, my patrons. So let's give a shout out. There's a bunch of patrons that I need to give a shout out to. I'm sorry if I'm repeating this, because some of these I've seen before. But a shout out to Carrie Mavas Simeon. I have a hard time pronouncing names, so sorry if I butcher your name. Jesus Escalante, Charlie Williams Jr., Paul O'Keefe, big shout out there. YJK, shout out. Terrence Creighton, shout out. Nicholas, shout out to Nicholas. Sean Tucker, Craig Semple. Marcos Munoz, who's been around for a while. Marcos is quite active on the YouTube channel, so he's been a long time watcher, viewer, listener, so definitely appreciate Marcos being around. Ernest Paredetto, there we go. Ernest Paredetto, got the name right. Miguel Montas and Alan Johnstone and Sean Taylor, thank you guys all for being patrons on my Patreon page. It's really awesome. Be doing some more Patreons as soon as I can. I definitely want to do, because what I do on the Patreon page is I put up some of the old school stuff that I used to have that people liked, some of the old documentaries and stuff. And I also try to do a watch along and some other stuff like that, some exclusive shout outs. I think this week I'll be doing more in-depth stuff about the New Japan Cup on the Patreon page. So if you guys want to check that out and you're not on my Patreon page, it's patreon.com/RasslinRantin, RassSSLinRantin. There are tiers as low as $1. The highest one's like $5. So if you want to help out this channel and get some exclusive content once a month, then definitely check it out. I appreciate it. Now, on to the news of the week. I think we're going to reverse it this week. We're going to start off with the entertainment news, and I'm probably just going to switch this up every time I do one of these. But WandaVision, man, dude, if you got, I know from the stats on my YouTube channel, there are a lot of wrestling fans who don't watch anything else. Apparently have no interest in anything else but wrestling. But there's a bunch of you out there who do like the entertainment stuff. That's why I'm trying to knock it out early at the beginning of the podcast. But the WandaVision, man, that was a great series. I did not expect it to be as good as it was. They did do an interesting thing, though. A lot of fan theories had popped up over the 2 months it was running. Because, it was 9 weeks, about 2 months that the show was running, and they were releasing episodes every week on Disney+. And early theories about there being some sort of crossover and multiverse stuff, and that Agnes was Agatha Harkness. I mean, a lot of that stuff proved out. But Evan Peters, everybody was like, I myself included, was like, oh my God, this is the crossover. This is the, and Marvel was just playing with us. I don't think that they intended to do anything big with it now. But Evan Peters playing a Fietro or a mock Quicksilver in the show was pretty awesome, and it got everybody talking about the show, which is exactly what it was meant to do. I don't think they've worked out quite yet what they're doing with the Fox thing, so I think it was a hot shotting, as we call in certain other genres. But it turned out that he wasn't from the Fox universe. It wasn't some sort of multiverse thing. But I don't think that that's the end of Evan Peters in the MCU, and that they're done with the idea of doing a multiverse with the X-Men characters they got from Fox. I think that there's too much there that they can do that's going to be just so awesome and so much generate so much buzz for their shows. But overall, WandaVision, I did a final review up on a YouTube channel, so you can check that out for more information. But that was a great series. It's going to be hard for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I think starts next Friday, to follow up that act of WandaVision, because man, that was some really good storytelling. Didn't give everybody what they wanted. Some people wanted Mephisto and Nightmare and Cathar, whatever the other demon's name is. They wanted a bunch of stuff. No Doctor Strange. But I think what we got for what the show was self-contained, and it did start a bunch of new stories in the MCU. So I definitely enjoyed it. The Walking Dead is back, of course. Me being a Walking Dead fan, I've only been watching the show for 3 years, so I caught it after everybody got sick of it. But there's still like 5-10 million people that watch the show around the world every single week. So, it's not like it's nothing, but it's not anywhere near like the 30 million that were watching it before. But seasons 9 and 10 were excellent. This last little chunk of episodes they've attached on to season 10 have been pretty good so far. And I'm saying this right now, if this woman that they just debuted in the last episode winds up having Daryl's kid, there's going to be a lot of angry women. I already saw there's like this Irish girl who does Walking Dead, all kinds of stuff. Like, she's really obsessed with The Walking Dead and Norman Reedus. And I saw her watch along of the episode, and she's like, I don't like this girl. You could just tell she was so biased because she's got a crush on Norman Reedus that she did not want to see anybody hook up with Daryl. And Daryl had no romantic involvement with anybody, not Carol, not Beth, nobody. A little bit of flirting with Connie, but that's just pretty funny. It's weird to seeing Daryl as a character evolve from what he was when the series first started as like this kind of young, ignorant redneck, and now he's like the baddest ass on the whole show. So I am going to be continuing to do watch-alongs for The Walking Dead. I'm going to go back after this little extra 6 episodes for season 10 that they do are done. And I'm going to go through all the seasons, probably do a video for each of the seasons, because I never did catch up. I had to watch The Walking Dead. I basically binge watched the first 7 seasons because I picked up on it so late. So we'll get back into that at some other point in time on the YouTube channel. Over in the world of pro wrestling, a lot of stuff has gone on the past week. New Japan Pro Wrestling's been extremely busy. The New Japan Cup is up. I haven't watched the last night, so I think they may be done with the first round of the New Japan Cup, which so far so good, has been pretty entertaining. It's some really solid matches on there. Zack Sabre Jr. and Clark Connors is a lot of these young lions. I'm going to say Yuji. All of them are just really, really good. Their Young Lion program has developed some really great stars. And I think in the future, because I know a lot of people are kind of down on Master Wato and the Great Okan, but I think the Young Lions from this year and from the last half of last year, Shota, of course, a lot of those guys, once they get back to New Japan, I think it's going to be a nice crop of not only the Japanese grown stars, but the LA Dojo guys are amazing. Like a bunch of those guys are really good. You can just see star power on all of them. It's amazing. So far, my favorite match in the New Japan Cup would have to be Okada and Shingo. That was just fantastic. Of course, that was also one of 2 big shocks in the first round very early on, that Naito fell to the Great Okan and Shingo beat Okada. So 2 of your big 4 are in. Obviously, Ibushi's not in it. So there was only one left of the big 4, Jay White. I'm not going to spoil that because I'm doing a review today. But they're getting rid of the big 4 of the New Japan Cup, which is something they should do. It opens up the door to build up new stars, because they're going to kind of have to do that, because Okada and Naito in particular have been in the big 4 for a while now. Tanahashi, in my opinion, is not in the big 4 anymore. And Ibushi's been around for a while. Jay White's been around for a while. They've kind of cycled through a lot of those matchups. So it's time to try to open a door and let somebody else come up and see what happens. I don't know if it's going to be the Great Okan. I don't think so. But definitely Shingo could definitely wind up in that big four as well. And a bunch of other guys. You got Will Ospreay still lurking around there. So there's tons of talent. Sonata, if Sonata can get that next gear, he'll be up there. I feel bad for Juice Robinson, though. He fell to Kenta in the first round. He's got that new hairdo. He's got an afro. I guess he's going back to the... For those of you who are ethnically, I don't want to say ignorant, but you just don't know much about hair. I have dreads, obviously, for those of you who see my YouTube channel. It looks like Juice is about to go back to the dreads, because that's usually what you do is you let your hair grow out, and then you get a big afro, and then you dread it up. So I think he's going back to the dreads eventually. But that aside, outside of Juice's hair thing, I mean, it's crazy that they still haven't pulled the trigger on him. But I also was watching that match with Kenta closely and kind of going, he's kind of in the same spot he was 2 years ago as far as his performance is concerned. So I think he's got to find that next gear, maybe worry less about trying to get the crowd into his thing, even though that's a shtick. The Japanese audiences love him because he's so interactive with the crowd. It looked like he was making that turn with that Moxley feud, and then things went awry, and he didn't stay there. I think the way he was when he faced Moxley, I think that Juice Robinson is a Juice Robinson that could be an upper mid-card star in New Japan Pro Wrestling and even maybe get up into the main event. He's got the look. He can wrestle. He's got the ring acumen. He just hasn't found that next gear. Same thing with Sonata to be up in the upper mid-card main event level. So we'll see what happens with Juice. Him and Finley are doing they're on HMPW Strong, they're in Impact against Gallows and Anderson, they're all over the place, so it's not like they're lacking for any work. I just want to see Juice rise up to his full potential. I think a lot of us do. But again, I'll get more into depth with the New Japan Cup coming up on the YouTube channel this week, so definitely stay tuned for that. WWE ramping up big time for the Fastlane show. I do like some of the storylines they got going on. I mean, even though they've recycled this whole... the storyline with Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks is pretty much a recycled storyline, right? We've seen this, okay, they're going to tag up and take on the tag champs. They do this all the time. But it's not so much, wrestling storylines are recycled all the time. It's the execution and the personalities involved. I think this works because the personalities involved, Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks, being kind of fresh personalities for WWE too, who has been moving a lot more, as you can see, because of, and I think BLM and the way the culture is changing right now is definitely influencing this. Obviously, Bobby Lashley becoming a world champion, and we're still making a big deal about it because representation is important. I'm not going to get on some soapbox here because I'm not liberal or conservative. I just look at things the way I look at them. So I don't care if I agree with somebody or with this group of people or that group of people. But Bobby Lashley being champion, a lot of people said it was long overdue. I think so. They've done a great turnaround. That's why the Hurt Business is such a great faction. A lot of people go, I don't see what the big deal about the Hurt Business is. This is the big deal about the Hurt Business. It turned around Shelton Benjamin from being kind of an afterthought, Cedric Alexander being a guy who wasn't really used, Bobby Lashley to a guy that was a big star but being misused completely up until that point. And MVP is a guy who, is nearing full retirement, but him as the figurehead for that group is amazing. And that it is one of the best factions in wrestling period right now. So big ups to the Hurt Business, big ups to Bobby Lashley for the championship. The rumors about him and Brock at the at WrestleMania, I would love to see that. It seems like a McMahon kind of main event. I don't want them to throw Drew McIntyre in there. I don't want it to be a triple threat match. I want it to be Brock. If they're going to do Brock and Bobby, do Brock and Bobby. Don't put anybody else in there. There's other stuff for Drew McIntyre to do too. Drew had a great run last year with his 2 reigns as champion. It's fine. Edge and Roman, not the match I wanted to see, but I think I think it could work. I'm going to have to watch more of what the interaction is. Of course, right now, Roman's focus is on Daniel Bryan because of the Fastlane match coming up, which that was an excellently done, too, the way they set that up at the last SmackDown with the cage match with Jey Uso and Daniel Bryan winning the opportunity. Daniel Bryan's story is pretty interesting. He's in the last bits of his career, too. So there's a lot going on here. I would love to see Edge and Daniel Bryan in a match. I don't know if for the championship, but two guys whose careers we thought were completely over with, who both came back from career-ending injuries. There's a storyline there that I definitely think. I mean, I would even kind of like it if Bryan had challenged Edge for the briefcase at WrestleMania, and they'd have to wrestle a match, and then the winner would go on to Roman, and that might happen. That could be a thing. Again, I don't want to see a triple threat match with Roman, Bryan, and Edge. I want to see one-on-ones. You can say the triple threat match for the tag team titles, which probably is going to happen. So far WWE's been decent. I still have a problem when I watch the shows though. There's too much artificial. The Thunderdome is overproduced. A lot of you guys have been listening to me for a long time know that how I feel about these overproduced shows WWE does. The canned audience noise. It feels so artificial and so alien and so foreign that it's just hard to kind of relate to it because it's such a weird thing. Like it's just a bunch of lights and lasers and stuff and a lot of prancing. I watched SmackDown I was going to do a review of it and I decided not to because I couldn't. But I remember watching the show and like there's just so much talking and acting and lasers and prancing and posing and then there's a little bit of a match here and a little bit of a match there. The Daniel Bryan cage match with Jey Uso was pretty good. But a lot of the rest of it, but you have to sit through 2 hours, almost 2 hours of all the prancing and preening and posing and posturing and pyro and lasers and all of this stuff. It's just, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not easily fooled by that. I should say fooled. I'm not easily entertained by that. I'm like, yeah, it's a bunch of lights and people standing and posing. Give me something else. Give me some action here. Give me something I can feel that is a storyline that I can relate to, and not this stuff. And somebody brought up an interesting point about championships. They were talking about the WWE titles being props. And it's interesting when I watched SmackDown and then immediately I rewatched the New Japan Anniversary show and all the controversy that's going on in New Japan with Kota Ibushi apparently merging the titles, the IWGP Intercontinental and the IWGP Heavyweight Championship now becoming an IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, and Tanahashi legitimately, kayfabe and shoot, has a problem with it. Okada legitimately, kayfabe and shoot, has a problem with it. Naito has a problem with it. The announcers, both English and Japanese, are talking about it. The wrestling fans are talking about it. Everybody, because that championship has so much value. Everybody's very, very hesitant about messing with the lineage. And that's a great contrast to what goes on, so say over in WWE, for example, where the championship, they've done it so many times with merging the titles and splitting the titles. There's a World Heavyweight title, then there's a WWE Heavyweight title, then there's the WWE World Heavyweight title, then now it's just the WWE title and the Universal Championship. And they've done it so many times with their primary championship that it doesn't, and I think that's what the New Japans are kind of fearing, that you're going to dilute it and it's not going to be as important, and you're kind of screwing up with the legacy, which is important as far as people, as far as your audience and the character that is a championship, because championships are characters, and the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship is a character. The WWE Universal Championship is a character in the show. And I say character the same way like the Millennium Falcon is a character in Star Wars, right? Or the Enterprise is a character in Star Trek or whatever. Lucille is a character in The Walking Dead as Negan's bat. That's what those things are. And it's for fans and people who are watching these shows, you have to kind of take care of those characters because they're inanimate objects, and everything that you do, everything that they are is how you treat them. And a lot of people have been saying for a long time now that WWE treats its championships like props, and New Japan treats them like actual championships, like they matter. And it resonates, man. And the fans will see it. If that's the way you present it, that's why New Japan fans are very, very intense about what's going on with their world championship, and why WWE fans sometimes can't tell the difference between the Universal title and the world championship outside of what color it is. So, it's very interesting to see the dynamics between the two of them. But again, you have to remember, WWE is sports entertainment. They're not trying to be a pro wrestling show. They're trying to be a variety show. So the titles are props. But it does make it hard when people... Daniel Bryan's trying to really, really hard to do it right now, and so is Edge. But it makes it hard for you to take, as a fan, to suspend your disbelief and take the championship stuff seriously, because just compare how the promo that Roman and Heyman and Daniel Bryan were doing about the WWE Universal Championship and the promos that were, or World Champ, whichever one it is. I don't even know. And all the discussion that's going on that feels very genuine in New Japan about the IWGP Championship and how artificial all the discussion about the Universal and the World Championships are in WWE, except for Edge, who makes the championship sound like it's important. Everybody else is just delivering lines. And when I said this, I decided I was the best. I do this full time not because I need it, but because, Roman kind of slipped back into bad promo territory there this past week, but it's overproduced. That's just the thing with WWE. But from a 1,000-mile or 10,000-mile in the sky, whatever the term is, view of WWE right now, they're still doing decent work, so I can't crap on them too much. AEW, on the other hand, talk about crapping on it. Is the honeymoon period over? AEW Revolution, which wasn't a bad pay-per-view, it was an average pay-per-view. It had a couple, I did a review on YouTube, it had a couple good matches. The ones that stand out were the Bucks against MJF and Jericho, great match. The Battle Royal, the Tag Team Battle Royal was pretty good. The rest of the matches were okay. The cinematic was, for me, again, a person who's not big into cinematics. I actually really enjoyed the Darby Allin Sting cinematic against Team Taz. A lot of people were picking that apart, though. The people who complained about it, the stuff they complained about, I was like, it's a little nitpicky, but, to each their own. I enjoyed it. And the main event was a decent match, but I think they tried too hard. They over promised and underperformed. I'm trying to find a nice way to say it, but that's what it really happened. They overpromised and they underperformed. And I think because they've been on such a run of all this positive press and the growing audience and all of the stuff that's been going on, and it seemed like they could do no wrong, and I think they just went too far. And they couldn't produce what they were hyping. And that the final spot of that match, the post match with Moxley being covered up by Eddie Kingston, and oh my God, what's going to happen? And we're expecting the Death Star to explode or something, and then it winds up being, it's like, what was that? And the unfortunate thing, even though logically I go, well, the whole show was actually decent. But that last part is the lasting memory. And that's why, I'm an author, and how you end a story, how I end my books is very important to people's overall impression of the books. And it's the same thing with wrestling shows. How you end the show can change people's perception or even taint people's perception of what would otherwise be considered a good to pretty good show, which Revolution was. So, yeah, I don't know. The honeymoon period seems to be over. I see a lot of people trashing them on social media. A lot of you guys in my YouTube comments, don't have a lot of good stuff to say about Tony Khan now. There's some controversy about some content providers or content creators who are having their posts copyright stricken because they were negative posts about AEW. So, yeah, hopefully AEW winds some of that back. I think they may be feeling their britches a little bit. I did want to talk about this one piece, though, that I didn't talk about in the YouTube video too much. But Christian Cage, the Instant Classic. I have never been a huge Christian Cage fan. This is the one thing where I really feel like this is you're taking me back to TNA. I mean, there's the Marty Sean thing applies here with the tag teams and which one is the better part of the tag team. I think a lot of people would say Edge is better than Christian. I know Christian has a lot of his hardcore fans, diehards, who say Christian's better, but my personal opinion, Edge is better than Christian. And I've never been wild about Christian. It feels a little TNA-ish, but we'll see. I didn't watch a lot of Christian's run in TNA. I watched some of it. It didn't do much for me, but maybe his run here in AEW will be different. But AEW really, really, really has to watch out for that. And they really need to watch out for overall kind of slipping into being a watered down version of WCW. They were doing a good job for a while, kind of forging their own identity, but I'm feeling too much, latter day WCW energy in the past month. I'm feeling too much TNA Impact energy from out of AEW. Also partial to my bias because, again, when AEW started, I thought, they're going to do something new, kind of be like a mix between sports entertainment and then what we get from New Japan, since a lot of those guys came from New Japan, and a lot of those guys, apparently I thought they liked the style, but apparently they didn't, because there's very little New Japan, if you've noticed, in AEW. Very little anything from that those guys carried over from New Japan, which, to a lot of New Japan fans who did not like the Elite, that is kind of a proof positive of some of their bias against the Elite, that the Elite really didn't give a crap about New Japan. They just used it so they could, because it was a way for them to get a spot. But if they had their own way, they just do sports entertainment. And to some extent, seems like that's somewhat true. I do think AEW they're getting a little too carny, and I think they need to draw back in. Do something. They're getting a little bit too close to what WWE's doing and what other promotions have done in the past. I think they need to go back to forging their own. They had some good ideas when they started, and then they've kind of let those ideas fade away. They don't even do the time cue calls anymore. 10 minutes remaining in a match. They need to find something else that's unique to them. They're fading into being kind of generic. So hopefully, the good thing about AEW is that they listen to this. So definitely with them, voice your opinions about it, because they do listen. Tony Khan listens. The Bucks listen. Cody listens. A lot of those guys and girls listen to fan feedback, and hopefully they have not gotten such big heads yet that they're going, we're just going to do whatever we want to. You'll catch on to it later. It's like, no, you guys got to pay attention. And if not, AEW, if they don't do it, AEW is not going to last. They're going to fall into the same problems and the same ruts that many a Dixie Carter and a Jeff Jarrett and a Vince Russo and a Jim Cornette and an Eric Bischoff and so on and so forth have fallen into the past, where they got too close to being like WWE and not enough like what they were doing, their own thing. So we got to watch out for that. But I have hopes. We'll see what happens this week on Dynamite. There is a loaded Dynamite this week. The Inner Circle thing might blow up with MJF and Jericho. That's the thing I'm looking forward to the most. I finally got to watch the Shaq Cody match, which was better than I thought it was going to be. A lot of people were saying it was pretty good. I didn't believe him, but I was like, oh no, they did that the right way. They absolutely did that the right way. So that's a shining spot right there. And I love the table, but the table spot with Cody and Shaq has become a meme. It's like people doing it everywhere. It's awesome. And that's good. That's what you do. That's why you get somebody like Shaq, so you can make a meme like that can go viral, and then people who aren't watching AEW can go be aware of it at least, and it gets their name out there more. A lot of fans don't really understand some stuff like that, but that's why you do things like Mike Tyson and things like Shaquille O'Neal, is to get the name of AEW out there more, so more and more people are familiar with it, because there still are millions of people who've never heard of it. So, attaching it with Shaq and having some funny meme that, somebody who doesn't, not like some people who just watch nothing but wrestling, but everybody else in the world, who haven't heard of AEW, if they see that Shaq, those funny Shaq Cody table spot things where they're replacing a table with cars and boats and crashing through boats and all that stuff, it's freaking hilarious. But if somebody else sees that who's not familiar with AEW, like, ooh, what's that? Is that some WWE thing? No, it's this thing called AEW. What's AEW? They become familiar with it, and they may take an interest to look at it. That's the smart play that AEW is doing right now. So that's pretty much it. I thank you guys for checking out the podcast this week. Again, I'm bogged down with stuff. There's so much stuff going on right now. I might have to reduce my schedule and come up with a better schedule for doing wrestling, entertainment videos, and this podcast, because right now it's a little hectic, and as some of you know, I do like about 6 other things that take up my time, so it's hard to keep on a good schedule with this, but I thank you guys for being patient with me. And again, if you want to check out my Patreon page, I got some new stuff coming up this week, so definitely check that out. Thanks for listening. Be safe out there. Enjoy the beginning of spring and behave yourselves, but not too much.